Okay. So welcome, welcome, welcome to another Sunday of When Black Women Gather. It's been a minute since we've gotten together, so thank you all for being patient with me while I was recuperating. I'm still not 100%, but I'm close, so I'm feeling much better. So we're here. And I wasn't going to do one, but today is Father's Day, and I said, let's talk about fathering, right? In a way that we can honor our fathers, right? And I always think of my own experience. My father, I don't think he was around after probably first or second grade, maybe second or third, I'm not sure. But for most of my life, I did not have a father and had a wonderful, wonderful mother and can't imagine life without a wonderful mother. But I have to acknowledge that so many other people who did grow up with just a father, because I wish I had a daddy-daughter relationship and I didn't. So I thought we could talk about that a little bit today and just in general, what are the challenges that fathers face, and are we a part of the problem? How much do we contribute to that? I know that Black men have gotten a bad rap in terms of their involvement in their children's lives because they did a study, I think, in 2013. And the CDC found that when Black fathers are in the home, they're actually more engaged with their children than are white fathers. And we're on par when we're absent fathers. And we know the things that have created the distance in our family, the break that our families are broken up, in prison. The prison complexes is right up there as one of the main contributors. Not to mention the deliberate acts of the 60s that, broke up the Black family, removed the father from the home. GI vets coming back from war, not able to get, did I say GI? The vets coming back from the war, not able to get, the benefits that other men had. And welfare originally was not, it was designed for white women who found themselves to be either widowed or single parents or just holding it down while their husbands were away at war, or whatever the case may be. And somehow, the face of that changed and we became the victims of welfare. So I guess we can start out if anybody has like some really great daddy daughter story that they can tell. I was hoping one friend would get on. She actually gave a kidney for her father, and she said it was just the best thing ever. He didn't lie. I think he lived another 3 years after that, but that was such a bonding um, thing. Do we do that? So, who has a story? Anybody that you want to share about your father? Go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand, Deidre. It's a small group. Just go ahead and talk.
The story about
Deirdre.
my father is he died when I was 5 years old of a massive heart attack.
Mm,
But I never grew up without his memory. My mother
right.
kept his memory alive for me, my sister, and my brother. So I always knew that I had a father. I was never one to say, I don't have a father. I never felt that I
Mhm.
grew up in a fatherless home because I
Right.
knew him and I knew my grandmother and aunts and uncles. What pains me is the image we have allowed of Black fathers. Not all of them are absent fathers, not
Right.
all of them are absent intentionally, and not all of them are in prison. My father had a heart attack at work.
Mhm.
When he died, he got workman's compensation and other insurance. He had provided for us.
Mhm.
And my mother was able to, and this is in Mississippi, my mother was able to get an attorney who set up a trust fund for us in 1953 that provided our education through high school. And again, this is in Mississippi, and we're all Black. There are good fathers. My brothers are good fathers who provide for their families. Everybody owns their home. Everybody at this point has retired from a job that they held for a long time. My nephews are good fathers. I really hate this image of the of negativity when it comes to Black men and fathering. I had a good daddy.
All valid points. And one call we had some time ago, we talked about the intact Black family, and in the '70s, up until the '70s, I guess you would say the Black family was more intact than was the white family. So there was a period where things deliberately, started changing. But yeah, you're right. There are more. Just put a thing in the chat for you guys. It's the report that I was talking about, the myth of the absent Black father. I think you'll find it rather interesting. What it says is that according to the U.S., according to the CDC, Black fathers are more involved in their children's lives than fathers of other races, challenging the myth that Black fathers are absent. The report found that Black fathers who live with their children are more likely to bathe, dress, change, or help their children use the toilet every day, take their children to and from activities every day, help their children with homework, provide physical care for their young children, and read to their children. And that certainly is not the image that we get of the Black father. We get the image of the Black father being very stern, we tell our boys don't cry. It's not manly to cry. Um, and the father's just not engaged. And I think that, it's up to us to disrupt that image. Anybody else have any like stories you want to share, good or bad? I mean, we haven't all had great fathers. We haven't all had. How many people today sent out a happy Father's Day message to a woman? Anybody? Oh. Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing I purposely did not do today, which I have done in the past. Not to say that women aren't showing up in both roles, not by choice, but I think, but we don't. I guess I thought about as I was thinking about that is how often do I send a message to a father to say Happy Mother's Day? I'm sure that I never have. And I'm going to guess that most of you on this call probably haven't either. So, uh, yeah. But anyway, so anybody else have any stories or anything that you want to share? Matthew, you're the only guy on this call. Do you think Black men get a bad rap? Or what's your thought on Black fatherhood?
I was just listening and taking it in. The speaker just before, well, the only one that spoke, kind of struck that same uh heartstring in me because my father died when I was young too. Um, Massive heart attack, same way. But he was a great man. I just didn't want to hog the time up. I just want to say amen to what she said because that was generally my dad. I mean, he provided for us and provided for my mother. And they were a unified team. He was a good dude, a very good dude. And uh, she said something that got me because the same way. I guess it's that era. He loved his family. He loved his mom. I mean, excuse me, Lord have mercy. He loved his wife, my mom. Um, he just the dude just loved kids. I mean, he loved children. I
Right.
mean, not only us, everyone in the neighborhood. I mean, that's where all the kids were. All the kids were there because everybody was calling them pops. All of my friends called him pops. They didn't call him Mr. Gregory. They called him pops.
And we've gotten away from that whole community thing as well. Um, I don't know, all of it. So the Black family has changed as has the American family. And we're a microcosm of a larger uh, situation. So of course there would be deficiencies in our family. But I think that historically we just had, you know, uh, things in our family that didn't happen in other families. Like, if somebody's aunt, sister, or whoever couldn't take care of the kids didn't go to foster care. They went to somebody in the family. Rarely did we put our family members in homes as they got older. And the fathers were there. And I think Big Mama, even though she gave the appearance that she was in charge, she was deferring to father. Um, and I don't know that we see a lot of that anymore. Even the Black family reunions, I keep seeing these things on TikTok and what have you with the old backyard barbecues where everybody was there and laughing and some uncle was cutting up. I guess that doesn't happen as much now as it used to. So there's a breakdown of the family. But I just think there's more good. You keep seeing, I don't know if you all saw the video that I sent out with the daddy daughter dance. I mean, those kinds of things are real and it's happening. Or when the Black men are showing up at schools in great numbers to for the first day of school with Black children. So I think, there are some concerted efforts for Black men to show up in more positive roles. And I also saw that there's an increase in Black single fatherhood. So that's a plus also. And do we celebrate them? So I'm doing all the talking. Does anybody else have anything you want to share about fathers?
Uh,
And what is
can I just
what is
add?
our role? Go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, I appreciate everything that has been said so far. And you just mentioned Black single fathers, Um, my nephews, I'm really, really proud of him. He raised his daughter. Um, my niece's name is Amira, and that man is doing a heck of a job. I mean, just he was mentioning about bathing them and changing them and helping them with their homework and taking them to events and all of that struck a
Yeah,
nerve because that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, and she has turned out to be a beautiful young woman.
right.
And as for myself, I was just lucky because I had brothers, and I think what that behavior my father did leave behind was family is first. And
That's
my
true.
brothers, through my father, taught me how to be a good dad myself.
Yeah.
I just didn't miss a beat. Just did not miss a beat because of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. My brother, I've heard him say that, his boys are grown now, but he struggled with being a good father because he didn't have the example of one. So it was just kind of like, learn as you go, kind of. So I wonder how many other Black men struggle with that. Um, Ms. McBride, did you want to say something?
I did. I grew up with my father was a merchant seaman, so he was gone a lot. But whenever he was home, he was a complete and total dad. He could not do enough for us. He could not give us enough guidance and direction. He shared experiences from all over the world because he knew that he wasn't there, but he didn't want us to be afraid or uncomfortable in any kind of circumstance. So he always shared stories with us. I can remember to this day all the cards, the different cards that he bought my mom for the holidays, Christmas, everything that he did was so purposeful as far as the family was concerned. And spoiled, yes, we were, but he was also but he was just a good man, and I spoke to my grandson yesterday and I said to him, I said, you know what, when you call me for Mother's Day, um, you were supposed to say Happy Mother's Day, and an hour later, we were still on the phone. That was the longest Mother's Day. And I said, but you remind me so much of my dad because his personality and mannerism. And the first thing he said, oh no, Grandma, I love your wisdom. I love whatever you have to share. I want to hear it. And it sounded so much like my dad because my dad had 5 daughters, a wife, and a female dog. So he really didn't have much. He really didn't have much wins anyway. He was always the perfect gentleman. He always had a smooth personality, and I kind of throughout my life, I kind of looked for those qualities in anybody that I had a relationship with because I knew what a real man was all about. I knew what it was for to be taken care of. I knew what it was to be feel comfortable, safe, confident, because you had, so even though he wasn't there all the time, he
Right.
was there. And I had my dad until I was 60 years old. So I was truly blessed. My
Uh,
father passed away when I was 60 years old. And that is the ultimate blessing. And just like today, I just finished sending my girlfriend's father Father's Day greetings in heaven. My father's in heaven, her father's in heaven. But back then, you had, it was really, the fathers were really part of a village. And I always believe that no matter what happened, um, fathers have a place. And I think a lot of times our fathers get a bum rap because
yes.
every dad is not a bad dad, and every dad that's not in the home, for whatever the reason might be, doesn't mean that they're bad dads. And that's what I have to live with, and that's what consoles my heart on this Father's Day and any other day. I'm blessed to have had the father that I had. And for those, whatever role you're playing, be it as a single dad, if single moms can do it, why can't single dads?
Sure.
And I thumbs up to them. I appreciate them. I respect them, and they share a special kind of love. Their love is probably more difficult because of how society looks at them. But at the end of the day, a good dad is a good dad. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are on and the roles that they have assumed in making life happy and pleasant for their children.
Exactly. Exactly. Michelle Burgess, I know you have good daddy stories because I've heard a couple of them. Did you want to share one?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, hello everyone, and happy Father's Day to the men that are on the call. Yeah, I'm an only child, and no, I'm not a daddy's girl, but my dad was a college professor at King University in Union, Jersey, and actually got his PhD at NYU, I think when I was about 3 years old, which was, an interesting time for a black man to get a PhD. Had served in the war and all the other good stuff. And so he was a real good role model, I think, for me. I thought he was a good father. Everybody loved him. He was conjovial. He was very intelligent. He was the oldest of six kids. And what I loved about my grandmother's story is that she had six kids. You have to think about the time, like, daddy was born in 1925. And so you're bringing these kids up through the Depression and all. But so she had six kids. She had four boys and two girls. So all six had undergrad degrees, four had graduate degrees, and two had PhDs, and daddy was one of them. So he had an EDD. But he was, well liked in the community. He was a church man. He was an alpha man, Alpha Phi Alpha, if you're into fraternities and sororities. And what I used to love about him is he and his college roommates would, and this is a lost art. You know how guys would get together and they would banter back and forth. They would banter back and forth, but they would do it in quotes. And I'm talking like Shakespeare quotes and really interesting discussions and deep kind of discussions and all, but they'd be bantering back and forth and having fun. And I think I'm sorry that art is lost, so to speak, that the eruditeness, if that's a word, the carriage of men. I feel that we've lost something along the way. But he was, in my eyes, he was my hero. And I tried to find someone who we've been married for 40 years. It was similar to him, and you
Wow.
know, I had a really good experience. And interestingly enough, I didn't realize how different my experience was until I got to college. My college roommate, she grew up in Philly, and I drove her back home one day, and she actually lived in, I guess you call it a row house, and that was not my experience. And so that was eye-opening. And then she told me that her dad was not in her picture. And I was like, what do you mean your dad is not in your picture? Because everybody on my street growing up had a father and mother living in the house. And so it was odd to hear someone I was in college. No, in grad school. So that was what, 20? I was 21 maybe. So 21
Right.
is when I'm finding out the world was totally different than, the way I grew up. Um,
Mhm.
and that was kind of eye-opening for me. Um, But and then I guess that's when I started noticing how different the world was in grad school, and how people's experiences were so different than how I had grown up. But you know, I just hope that somewhere along the line here, we are, as parents and role models and mentors and aunts and uncles and whatever else, that we are trying to stimulate our young people, especially our young boys, to be more um, the total package, in terms of how they speak, how they act, how they treat. And I keep telling my granddaughter now, who's 9, I say, look, if we even had this discussion yesterday, I think it was talking about, were we talking about OJ or something? I forget. But, if the guy is looking like he wants to think like he wants to hit you, you're out of the door. You just don't accept anything. And I was telling the guy was white. He was sitting here and I said, I already told husband, you act crazy. You even think like you're looking like you're trying to hit on me. It's gonna be Yana. I'm sorry that the iron skillet slipped out of my hand. I had a moment of insanity. I have no idea what happened.
Didn't even know
You know,
there were grits in that pot, did
that's
you?
right. Well, I don't do grits. I don't like grits. But the point is, what's his name moment. But anyway, yeah. I feel, when the I'm going on a rant right now, but when I saw the time when the young men were walking around with their pants below their belts, I'm thinking to myself, how are they gonna represent me? How they gonna save me if something happens? I mean, they can't even run down the street without the pants falling off. It's like, what happened to the
Right.
black men? And so that's a tough subject for me, but that I'm very disturbed about it. But I'm not gonna rant anymore. But I
That's
just
not ranting. That's a
I just
good to all of that's good.
yeah,
And
I
it is
just hope.
interesting that
Mm.
go
No, I
ahead.
was gonna say, but I just hope, in my mind, they're really trying to do genocide in so many different ways that if we don't wake up as a people, we're not gonna be here. We're gonna be merged in with another race, and you're all gonna be looking the same complexion, that kind of thing. Okay, you still got some color hanging out, but it's just the idea that
Right.
it would, I
Mhm.
kind of sort of blame moms, and this is a terrible thing to say because I don't have any sons, I have daughters, but it's like, moms, you need to get your sons in order. Even if there's no man in the house, find role models to help raise your son to be a man and to treat women right. I mean, they have to be the kings. We have to get back to the kings and queens of the world, right? We just how I don't not to go back to the idea where women are 2 steps behind or anything, but I mean, we just need we need strong men if we're going to continue this race, and we're going to continue, if we're going to just continue, how Richard Pryor say, white folks ain't expecting us to be here. So,
And we
you know,
like roaches, we don't die.
no,
What
but
was
we
it,
need
baby kids on X steroids? We just keep, yeah, it's amazing. I don't know who the chosen people are, but I'm convinced that it has to be black people because
yeah,
we've been through some stuff and we're still here.
strong genes.
But you raise a good point, and maybe somebody else can speak to it. What is the responsibility of the mother, do we think? And I don't know if anybody's on here who has raised a young man, but did you find that there were things that you really didn't know how to teach him? Carrie Ann, did you want to respond to any? I know Carrie Ann's involved in a lot of this. She and I talk about this all the time. So whatever you want to share is good, Carrie Ann. But go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. So yes, I am a mother of, I did raise a young black man, and as a single mother at the time, and I would have to agree with you that, yeah, and not to say, like you said, not to say that I blame the mothers, but um, I I was talking to my sister about this yesterday. I do have a young black man that like I said, that I have raised. He's now 23, gonna be 24 next month. And for me, it was important for me to look at him of what is he going to be as someone's husband. I was raising him to be someone's husband. So
Right.
although his father wasn't in the picture, and it wasn't, and now that I do the work that I do, and I'm involved in like trauma work and understand trauma a little bit more, his father really wasn't equipped to be able to be there for him. So I give him grace. I give his 23-year-old self grace. I don't necessarily give his 40-some-year-old self grace, because at this point you should be able to go and get counseling and figure it out. But 23-year-old, yes, I do give him grace. But the one thing that I did not do was bash him, because I think that the thing that a lot of women don't realize is that your child is made up of half of him. And if I was to bash his father, I'm also bashing my son, which then seeps into his self-esteem of who he is supposed to be. And then that then tears him down. And he's already feeling like inadequate because he feels like that I'm not good enough, because why isn't he here? Regardless of what I could tell him, he still feels inadequate because why didn't he choose to be here for me, and the abandonment feelings and things like that. I didn't necessarily have to get a degree to know that part of it. I just knew that for him, it felt like something was missing. Father's Day was very difficult for him. And I mean, I could see that on his face, even as a little kid. He was around until he was like 4 years old. So I would just get creative. Okay. We didn't necessarily watch TV leading up to Father's Day because all the commercials were dealing with fathers. So we would go out as much as my brother was around, my dad is around, but it's still not the same. And so for me, it was important for him to be able, I used to say, I'm going to create a Renaissance man. So I made sure he knew how to speak. He had to know how to dress. He had to know how to tie a tie. He had to know how to carry himself. He had to know how to walk into a room and articulate himself. He had to know how, like, the table settings. Like, when I tell you everything that he needs to be able to be somebody's husband, I made sure if I didn't know how to do it, I was going to get the people in the room to be able to show him how to do it. I surrounded him with mentors. And like you said, your dad's an alpha man. He is now an alpha man. He became an alpha man at like 18, 19 years old because he was mentored by alpha men. So for me, it was very important that once he got to like 13, he was in ninth grade at the time in high school. Okay, I'm not able to really carry him at that point because I know what it's like to be a woman, but I don't know what it's like to be a man. So I'm going to have to lean on the men in my life, my partner, which is now my daughter's father. What do I need to carry him from this point forward? This morning, I sent my son a happy godfather slash mentor slash father figure, Father's Day. He's not a father, but he's stepping in for those young men that he knows what it feels like to show up on today and not necessarily have your father in their lives and things like that. He's like, oh my gosh, that is really sweet. Like, thank you for sending me that. I really appreciate it. So yes, it can be done. And as far as people telling mothers, single mothers, happy Father's Day, I used to hate it. Don't send me happy Father's Day because I'm not equipped to be a father. I don't know what it's like. My shoulders are not broad for a reason. And that is for them to do that. And I wholeheartedly believe that men can be a crappy husband, boyfriend, whatever, but can be an amazing father. It is not one and the same. And we have to give them grace and support them however it is that they show up, and just be there for them and support them. And I am one to always salute a man regardless, because I do have an amazing father. And I don't really, my dad actually, I'm here with my dad right now. But I get to support him, take care of him. He's gone through like cancer treatment and all that kind of stuff, but love him wholeheartedly. I didn't realize just how many lessons that he has taught me without really teaching me, because he was in the home and, just protecting me and things like that, until now that I'm older and I have less Father's Day ahead of me than I do behind me. And I just appreciate him and my brother and, all the men in my life that just show up and do their thing just naturally, because that's just what they do and they don't look for anything in return. So that's
Yeah.
my 2 cents for now.
Oh, that's great. You said so many things that were important, and I appreciate that you recognize that there was just a time in your life where your son needed men, and there you as a woman, like I don't know how a man, a single father, he can't talk to a daughter about having her period. He's going to have to solicit women to help him get through that. And I think that we have to acknowledge that there are just, it doesn't mean that you're a bad mother, because for a lot of women, I think resist, I can raise a son. I did it. Yeah, we can. But there are just some things that we just cannot understand that's happening. I remember my nephew will never remember this. His father taught him, it was a big deal because his father taught him how to, go to the bathroom without holding his penis. Now, that was like stupid to me, but I'm like, okay, not stupid, but that's a bad word. It didn't, resonate with me, but to them it was a big deal. And then years later, a friend of mine was visiting me and she had her little boy with her. And he was little, so I was in the bathroom curling my hair, you know how we used to do, and he needed to go to the bathroom. And I said, "Come on in here, you can use the bathroom." Like he's a little one, like maybe I don't know, 4 or 5, I don't know. And so he sat down. And I was paying him attention, but I recognized he didn't wipe himself because I assumed that he had, had a bowel movement. And I said, "Hey, get back in here! You didn't wipe yourself." And he said, I didn't know he didn't have a bowel movement. He peed. And I just remembered my nephew and his father making such a big deal out about, showing him how to pee without holding his penis. So, and that's just not something that we wouldn't pay much attention to that. So, we do need men in our lives, in our children's lives. And as a daughter, I mean, I come from a family of 4 girls and 1 boy, and only one of the 4 of us is married, of us girls. Only one of us got married. None of the others got married. It just wasn't seen as, come from a long line of divorced women. And the women who did stay married, you're like, why are you still with him? So, it all matters, what we grow up with, what we experience, what becomes our reality. And I do think that, in terms of even dating, we need fathers to, guard us, protect us, guide us in terms of who we're dating. I look back on my life and there are certainly some things that my father certainly could have imparted upon me that, would have come from a male perspective. Um, so who else has any stories about, just being a single parent, maybe? Anybody? Or being the child, being the product of either being a single parent or coming from a single parent home?
I have something I want to say. My grandson, once again, with his mom and when his parents were in grad school, he spent a lot of time with me. And I told him, I said, if you pee on the floor, I'm popping your legs. You're tall enough to pee in the toilet. So I used to put Cheerios in the toilet and tell him to aim at the Cheerios. Because if he aimed at the Cheerios, he wouldn't pee on my floor. And just last week again, we talk about, because I'm a very untraditional grandma, as he says. And he said, Grandma, I was telling somebody that you taught me how to pee when I was a little boy. And I never peed on the floor. I said, I never popped your legs. So he said that, he said that was a funny way of doing things. He said, well, Grandma, it worked. He said, because some grown men will pee on the floor. I said, well, I know that, but you didn't pee on mine, and that was good enough. But you stop and you think about these things, because that was where his parents weren't there at the time. His dad wasn't there, and I had to go to Plan B because peeing on my floor was major. So
Plus, I know
I
you
resorted
had
to.
those. I know you had those god awful rugs that held every cent in the room. Did you?
Yes, yes. But just the idea, when you stop and you think of some of the things, how a lot of times in this life, when you don't have a plan A, you have to go to a plan B. But at the end of the day, when you can have a collaborative effort, so to speak, like I told his father, I said, I taught your son how to pee in the toilet. He said, well, how'd you do that? I said, I used Cheerios. He said, what?
Where did you
Cheerios?
get
I
that
said,
idea from, Miss
it is,
McBride?
and it was fun. He
But where did
actually,
you get the idea from?
somebody probably told me, trust me, I'm not that creative. And my grandson is 26 now, but sure enough, he was a dead aim by the time he was 3.5 years old. So, but it's just, it's sharing. I love this forum because being able to share ideas and issues means a lot. Because when you have somebody to talk to, they may not be immediate or right there, right present, But the idea now somebody else may leave here and teach their grandchildren how to aim at a Cheerio and not have any difficulty. So
Somebody
that
put in the chat that they had heard of that before. I had never heard anybody. I'd never heard of. I think it's a great idea.
it is a great idea, and it was fun, and it's fun for the kids too.
Yeah. I hate unisex bathrooms, and it has nothing to do with the whole gender issue, transgender issue. It has to do with I don't want to share a bathroom. Men, I mean, women can be messy enough, but men, oh my
That's
God,
true.
I don't. When I
That's
see a
true.
man coming out of one of those unisex bathrooms, I'm like, "Ugh, do I want to go in after him?" And it's just because he's a guy. Sorry, Matthew, but so what about the bashing
Actually,
part?
actually,
What?
actually, as I just said, right, I had it's 11 of us, and
You
more
said
sisters
11?
than brothers. Yeah. Um more sisters than brothers. It was just hearing the last speaker saying how she taught her grandson how to um dead aim. It's funny because actually I never really had that problem because I was taught how to go to the bathroom by my sisters. So therefore I sat down.
You sat down. You're like my girlfriend's son. I thought, oh my God, he's sitting down to go to the bathroom. I just thought that was crazy. So
We
you,
never
you
had that
said,
problem with having we never had that problem with having the toilet seat put up because I sat down. I mean, my sisters are like my moms. I tell you, I had this conversation with you before. They're like my moms. They didn't play. They just did not play. And to this day, I do the same thing. My wife never has to go in there and wipe up behind me because I'm like you. I'm like, I can't stand a dirty bathroom. That's the one thing that turns me off. I just can't do it. It's like almost like a germaphobe type thing.
yeah.
So you leave the bathroom tidy and neat. That's the way I was brought up. I mean, I give that to my sisters. I would definitely give that to my sisters and my mom. That's just the way I was brought up. And of course, I have a daughter. So living in the house with our women now. Well, she
Yeah,
doesn't
you're
live
the
with me
only
now.
one.
Yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So it just made me laugh hearing that story about how she taught her grandson how to dead aim. But I guess
I
that thing
love
was
that.
eliminated for me because they said you don't have to worry about aiming, just sit down.
Sit down. So let me, the other thing that I thought that Carrie Ann brought up that was interesting was the whole bashing. Um, I think, so my parents they were kids when they got married. My mom was 17 and he was 20. Because when you were pregnant back in the 50s, that's what you did. You got married. And I'm sure a lot of people got married during that time that either stayed together just because, uh, if they had to do it again, they wouldn't have. But they were married and they were kids themselves. But she never talked bad about him because by the time she's 25, she's on her own with 5 kids, if you can imagine. I just can't. I can't imagine being on my own with one kid. Um, but she never badmouthed him to us. I think she just knew that we would figure it out. And we all did, except my one sister. She was very taken with my father, and we used to tease her about it actually because we saw through him early. But you hear people who, you look like your father and all that. And like, Carrie Ann said, when you're bashing your child, when you're, talking trash about the father, you're talking about the kid. And at the end of the day, ladies, we chose these men to be the fathers of our children. And good choice, bad choice, that's who we chose. So where do we draw the line? Does anybody want to talk about, what is the impact that we have? And, the other thing that I would like for us to talk about too is when, in fact, our relationship doesn't work out, or no, let's not even make it personal. How do you all feel about when the relationship doesn't work out? Dad wants to see the kid, but maybe he's not paying child support. Like, where do we draw the line to say he's still the kid's father and the child needs the father in his life and it overrides those things, or don't we? I'm not a mother, so I can say whatever I want. I've not lived it. Does anybody want to speak to that whole thing around support and child bashing and visitation? It doesn't have to be a personal experience, just what's your opinion on it? I also watch a lot of these shows on paternity court, and we have so many fathers who think they're the father of the child and find out at some point that they're not. I've heard from my West Indian friends that when people migrate to the United States, apparently you have to have, I don't know, to have DNA tests or whatever to make sure that it's the person's child. And that's when these men are finding out that these children are not theirs. And the women are not held in any way responsible or accountable for that. And the interesting thing is we have this thing about being the presumptive father. So if in fact Matthew and I are married and I have a baby outside the with someone outside the marriage, Matthew has no rights. He is a presumptive father and is financially and legally responsible for that child. Uh, and that's interesting to me because these laws are written by men, and they certainly benefit the woman more. But the argument that the court will make is that they're doing what's in the best interest of the child. And I say, yeah. But anyway, let me not say what I say. Does anybody have any feeling about anything that I just put out there?
There's another dimension that I'd like to add. I know I'm a retired social worker, and one of the things that I saw years ago was how some women relate. They could have 4 or 5 children in the home, and they relate to the children differently based on how much they like the father. If they didn't like your father, then that was a problem, and you were treated differently from those whose father that they did love. So that's another dimension, another thing to think about also, because at the end of the day, I can remember one of my kids saying, "My mother doesn't like me, but she doesn't like me because she doesn't like my father." And when she grew up, she told her mother, she said, "I didn't pick him, you did, and now you don't like me because of him." So once again, the dynamics are very profound. And that's another thing that goes into just the whole parenting piece and Happy Father's Day and the whole bit, because a lot of times um, when you have a situation like that, it makes it difficult on the father who's not the father, just being there, because it's a lot of pressure, a lot of tension. So that's another thing to think about also.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on any of that? Dad bashing, paternity test. Go ahead, Carrie Ann.
So I just went to the fatherhood conference in DC, and the head of it's now called Child Support Services. It's no longer called Child Support Enforcement. She was there, and they actually have changed it to where the father they use time sharing as a means of reducing the child support payments now, because they realize the importance of spending time with the child is just as important as the monetary part of it. So making sure that the father spends time with the child is just as important. And also for mothers who are, or fathers, depends on who has the full custody, who's keeping the child away from the other partner, they are also taken away, they are also holding them in contempt of court. So making sure that it's really, because it should be in the best interest of the child, of course, barring any abuse and things like that. So, and then also if the father or the mother, because it could be the other way around, that is involved with child support, like let's say that the license suspension is like the very least thing that they want to do. They no longer want to do that. So if they connect them with job training, job services, and things like that, that will suffice for their license, for them to be able to keep the license, because the whole point is if their license is suspended, when they really go and get the job to be able to do that. Now, as far as my opinion on the child support and spending time, it really is separate. It really should be separate, because you contributing to the child is like, for me, in my own situation back then, I didn't want his money. I could care less about his money. And it was more so for his well-being in terms of his emotional well-being, because I can go out and make my money, and I think and a lot of times for me it was more so I could make $1 million if I wanted to, but you still should contribute to the care of the child, because it was both of us that did this or whatever. But if I had to choose my son's well-being over the money, I would choose my son's well-being 10 times over, because I now see the impact that it made on my son. And I actually did attempt to negotiate that part of it before I even brought child support. Child support was like the last resort, because it wasn't about the money for me. It was more so the time. And it was like negotiating, like, okay, like, can we meet halfway? Because he was living in another city. And so it was like, okay, can I meet you halfway? Can I bring him? Like, so like at one point I was willing to negotiate that part of it, but then it just became impossible to even negotiate that part separate from the child support, and then it just became too much. So sometimes it's, again, dealing with traumas and things like that that people are going through, is just not any way possible to do that, even without having a mediator involved and having like a third party involved. And if there's a way to rectify that, then there's hopefully a way to rectify that. One of the other points that they made at the conference is to come from a point that all fathers want to be involved with their child one way or the other, and not necessarily from the point that he doesn't want to be there, but all of them want to be there. And what does that look like? It requires a conversation, and not necessarily that, because what ends up happening is that once there was one guy that actually spoke about how he really wanted to be there for his child, but she made it really difficult. And even after he went through the courts, the judge finally realized, wait a minute, well, she's the problem, it's not you, and awarded him the majority of the custody. And even after that, he still had to fight like hell. Like his thing was fight like hell to just have co-parenting. So now the system is actually going more towards co-parenting as opposed to anything else.
Yep, makes sense. Makes sense. Is anybody on here who can talk to the issue of paternity? And has anyone else heard of this thing when people are, immigrating here, that they are needing to show proof of? It's interesting. I would hope that they do. Do they do DNA tests on the mother as well, or just the fathers? Is anybody? I don't know if that's. I've not had personal experience with that. Does anybody know about how that works? No. Yeah. So that's
Yes.
interesting.
So I have heard, well, there was this guy that's within our family that, like you said, the immigration thing, it wasn't until like years later that supposedly the mother said that, because apparently they were like teenagers when the daughter was conceived or whatever. And of course it went on, like, because I want to say his next oldest daughter. So that happened when they were teenagers. So then he ended up getting married to his wife, and his oldest daughter with his wife was like a teenager, like getting ready to graduate high school, when he finally told the teenager. But then when they actually started filing the papers, this was like the oldest daughter probably was in her 20s or something. And the paternity paperwork came back and said, no, that is not your daughter. And those years, like at this point now, he was on the verge of paying for the wedding of what would be his grandchild. And he continued to do everything because at this point, the grandkids were attached to him and all of that. And he kind of just felt sorry for the granddaughter, because, even though he kind of knew in the beginning that it really wasn't, that they just kind of pinned it on him, because he had a feeling that it was like an old man in the country area of the country they were from. And yeah, and so they just kind of railroaded him as a teenager to take the fall for this guy. And but he continues to do for the family, and they just it's a crazy situation. But yeah, they don't find out until they have to go for the DNA and the medical for the immigration stuff is when they find
So
out. But
I'm looking on the website as you're speaking, and they're saying that it is obviously the most um, um, it's the best tool for verifying biological relationships, but it is recommended but not required. So I'm not sure. So DNA testing is may also it's a recommendation, but it's not required. Which I guess that would make sense because a lot of people I hear when they're talking about when they're watching these paternity court cases or what have you, they're saying that everybody when you have a child, no matter what, should be forced to have DNA testing. Well, should they, or should it be up to the father? Um, I certainly should not be the mother's decision. It should be the father's decision. But y'all know that could destroy a marriage, particularly, either way. It can destroy a marriage because you're accusing or suggesting something that your wife didn't do, or because you find out something that you didn't want to know. But yeah, it's a real issue. Um, but yeah, so um, that's another thing too. I think we get caught up in our emotions. Oh, somebody putting their daddy's maybe. What is it? Mama's baby, papa's maybe. I can't see my whole thing here, but yeah, that's been something that's been said for a long time. Daddy's baby, mama's baby, papa's maybe. The fact is, women cheat as well as men, and they lie as well. Some guys are victims just like some women, and that's true. That's true. But I think somehow the guy gets a worse rap, right? Because he's seen as a deadbeat and this and that. And I've seen a couple of these TikTok things that may be real, may not be real, where the father comes home, with this kid that he had outside the marriage, and he's wanting the wife to help him raise the kid. Now that's a hard one, but it happens. And again, the poor kid is stuck in the middle of all of that. Um, but when the father goes out and gets the baby, has a baby like that, the mother ends up paying too. Because I remember meeting a young guy, he was in his 20s. He had like 7 kids and he's trying to hit on me. I was an older woman at that point to him. I'm in my 30s. And I just remember telling him when he told me he had 7 kids, I said, no woman in her right mind is going to hook up with you, and not an older woman, because I'm not going to take on the child support payments. I'm not going to deal with pay for your recklessness. And that's what happens too. If the combined family income becomes what is the determination for that child support. So that's a big deal. But should a father who, the woman was cheating and has this baby, should the father have to pay for the child? I don't think so. I think if the father has, been held out and been received as a father to the child, he has a right to continue that relationship or not, which is in the best interest of the child. But I don't think the courts should make him have to pay for his wife's transgressions. She too should have to go after the biological father for child support payment, just as the woman has to go after the father, the woman who's not married has to do it with the father of her child. Any thoughts on that? You guys are just too quiet. It's just a small group. I figure you want to talk a little bit more.
I I just listened to what you're saying, and I don't know, maybe I'm an anomaly. I First of all, I think it's wrong if you can't be honest, because at the end of the day, um, the child can get hurt, and I can kind of understand maybe if a woman doesn't tell the guy the truth. I don't know. I like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're just thinking about the kid, and um, what is this? It's in the best interest of the kid. Me as a man, well, I think Helen, we had this conversation before. I love kids, period.
Mhm.
Not to say I want to be stupid for any woman, but you know what? I think I would still choose the kid over that person, because I'm a forgiving person. I mean, I don't want anybody to treat me like I'm stupid because I just like to be honest about it, right? But for the
Right.
benefit of the kid, that would be it. Because I, again, I'm only speaking for myself. It'd be impossible for me to turn off my love. Not saying that anybody else can do that. I'm just speaking for myself. It'd be impossible for me to turn off my love. I mean, I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it. You know,
Yeah.
um, I was only blessed with one child, and I know that child's mindset was it was no mistaking this. It was no mistaking this because, as you know, my wife is Japanese, so there was absolutely no mistaking that. But I would also say that if it had turned out where there was another person who was black that fathered my child, I think I have the ability to put those discretions or transgressions aside
Right. Mm-hmm.
and say that, you know what, I may not be her biological father, but I'm her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all she know. For example, of course that's not the case, but if that was the case, I would know that's all she know.
Right.
And that's all I know. And that would be good enough for me. Because I think,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you have to look at what it is in the best interest of that child. The woman could have did that transgressions. That's between her and her Allah and her God. Okay. But I don't see me taking that out on the child, because they got to go through enough. You sometimes we hear our parents arguing, and you be thinking the kid could be thinking, is it because of me, or it was a case of a friend from Los Angeles, and I don't mean to ramble. I just want to share the story with you. And his partner is Filipino, and he well, she has four kids, one by him, and the other three by different men. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and for whatever reason, she had the kids in order to, I guess, suck in all of the men that she had the kids with. That was her last go to concept to keep the guys in her life. And his youngest, well, his daughter he had with her, she really messed her up, saying that she shouldn't have been born. And, the only reason why you was born was for me to keep your father, because she wanted to obligate her to her. And so she's going through a lot of mental things right now. Um, and my friend raised his other two, well, her third daughter as his daughter. He actually adopted her. And the dynamic between that is like, wow, he knows that, of course, he knew that that wasn't his daughter because she came along with him when they got together. But his biological daughter, of course, is his, and he loves the adopted daughter just as much as he loves his own biological daughter. It's a good guy, and
Yeah.
we talked about this several times about how she absolutely used her daughters to entrap the men. But that's something she got to square with her God once that time is there. He was a man. He took responsibility. He raised those girls right. Now actually he sent that child to Japan to study here for university, paid for everything. This is not his biological daughter. She knows her real father. A mom could have went after him for child custody or financial
Right.
support. I don't know. Maybe she did. He never even brought that up. He never even mentioned that. He never even looked toward that. He just whatever that girl needed, she got.
Right. And I think that's what we
But I
really
don't
want to.
blame the mom.
Yeah.
I don't blame the mom. I mean, you know what? For me, I'm like the other speaker was saying. I'm not going to bash that child's mom because that would be like me bashing her. I mean, just she is what she is, and she has to deal with that. I'm
I
not going
think
to bring it
if
up.
two people decide to stay together and in the face of those transgressions, then you need to, you know, really, do what's in the best interest of the child. And I certainly know at least one family where, um, and I think we all can remember some family where there's a kid who wasn't the father's, and that kid was treated very differently. And I do blame the mother, because if you decide to forgive me for whatever I did, or then I need you to, I'm not going to allow you to treat my child differently than the others. Um, so now it's a package deal, and this is a part of my package. So that's a real situation too. Um, so yeah, but anyway, I guess it's just a complicated issue. But does anybody remember the song "Color Him Father"? It was about a guy who marries a woman and she has these children and he just raises them like his. And the guy writes a song about it. It's called I think I'll color him father. I think I'll color him love. And I just think there are a lot of men who step in and are fathers to children that are not theirs. And again, it's probably not celebrated enough as it should be. Does anybody have a stepfather story that they can share? Um, Go ahead, Carrie, and I don't know if you don't have a stepfather story, but you want to
No,
share.
I
Go
don't have
ahead.
a yeah, I don't have a stepfather story, but a friend of mine, his girl, they were together probably like 10 years or so at the time, and she ended up having a one night stand and got pregnant, and it took her like he's a really good guy because he forgave her and raised that baby, gave the baby his name, his last name, and raised that baby like it was his. And even like she was accepted within the family and everything as if it was his. And
Yeah.
she looks nothing like the the family because the mom is a white girl and I guess the guy, the one night stand might have been like Hispanic or something. So she looks nothing like, but you can't say that she is not one of the girls and one of the family. So we just treat her like she is and just keep it moving because he accepted her and forgave her for it. They never did end up getting back together. And, but he accepted the baby.
Definitely happens. I think there's a lot of guys out here who are good men who just step up and take care of another man's responsibility. Does anybody have a stepdad story you want to share? Why are y'all so quiet? I'm not understanding. No? Poor, um, let's see. Anybody on the phone want to share a story about the father-daughter situation? Or just anything about paternity or fatherhood? No?
I don't know if I can call it a stepdad, but I hate talking about it because I don't want to ring my own bell, you know. Um, but I have friends who I helped raise their child. Actually, one I shouldn't even call her a friend because this is more than just a friend. It's really close to me. Here, one of the people I know, they weren't married. They had a child. Well, to be more direct, this guy um, was here. He's an American, the black guy, and he impregnated this woman he was going around with. He was already married, and he had, I think, 3 or 4 children. I don't know what his story was, but with other women outside of his wife. Okay, and one of my friends was one of the people he impregnated, and um, he unfortunately was killed in a motorcycle accident. Here in Japan. And it was not until, years later that I found out that he actually committed suicide. He ran his
Ooh.
motorcycle into a truck and killed himself. But he died when his son, with the woman I'm talking about, was only less than a year, maybe 8 months old. And that broke my heart for several reasons. One of which is the guy was black, and the imagery of having that thing. For me, I just took it personally because, what was the image of these people having for of us men here, about being a parent, period, outside of the fact of just being Black, um, that was one of the things. And as I just told you, I love kids. And I couldn't stand the fact of having that child not having somebody to show them how to tie a tie or use the bathroom as you guys was talking about, or just having someone to talk to. So um, I took it upon myself at that time to say, if nothing more, I can kind of mentor this child to have that person have someone to come to and say, hey, look, how can I throw a baseball, or how can I ride a bike or whatever, just to say, look, that was there. So um, all throughout his life, I was there, even with my daughter, and I'll be very straight with you. My wife does not, it took a while to get used to that thing of saying, why are you doing this for another woman? And I said, sweetie, don't look at me doing this for another woman. I'm doing this for any human being. You know me. It has nothing to do with me saying I have sexual tendencies toward the mom. I'm in love with that child. And so I tried my best. Every present that my daughter got for birthdays and things like that, he got one. And
Yeah.
he just turned 20 years old. And just before well, he took me to the airport on Saturday so I can fly into Thailand here. He was with us at the gala. And just the most beautiful thing about that is that, he said just before I left, that you were the closest thing for me having a dad. This came out of his mouth after all these years, and that, I mean, I tell you, we had to break out a towel because I had to go to the back room. I was crying so hard. It was just that word. I said, I'm not your father, but I'm glad you can see me as a dad.
Yeah. And we all can step in.
And
I think we don't recognize the impact we have on
again,
people's
maybe it
lives.
was so. I'm
For
sorry,
sure. Not that we don't realize the impact that we have on other people's lives.
you froze.
We miss that. So that's real. That's a good story. Um, Yeah, I can think of people in my life, even though my father wasn't there. There were definitely men, well, one in particular who was definitely like a father figure for many years, and well into my 40s, maybe even early 50s, still like a father figure, and had been for a very long time. So I think we find somebody to fill the void, but there's still things that you would like to know. I think about your natural parent, whoever the absent father is, the parent is. We make it like it's always the father, but some of these mothers are absent as well. And just because someone's there physically doesn't mean they're there emotionally. And is that worse than not having any father in the house at all, or the absent parent? Because that can be bad too. So how are we showing up even if we are there? I think in our neighborhood, which is an all Black neighborhood, um, I think we might have been the only kids in the neighborhood whose father, not say only, maybe there were two, maybe three families where there was so our family in one comes to mind right away where there wasn't a father, but there was a man down the street raising his two sons. And I think people kind of thought that our mom and their dad should hook up. Of course, that never happened. But he was raising his two kids. And this was in the 70s. That was very rare. And I don't know what circumstances occurred that he had custody of his children, but he certainly did. Um, so that was rare. And I'm glad when I hear Carrie Ann say that it's less rare now, because it shouldn't be. There should be no assumptions made about um, who's going to be the better parent when you end up in court. It should be more based on, some people, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm going to be a better parent than my, the father of my children. So there should be no assumptions made, but that's not the way it goes. For the most part, the women, the mother is favored in court. But then you hear these situations where the father, you can buy justice here in the United States, you can buy the courts because those fathers do not want to pay that child support. So if I got money and I can get a high-powered attorney, then I'm probably going to push so that I don't have to pay child support and custody will make that happen. Um, what was the woman's name? Does anybody remember? She had been with her husband forever. She put him through law school. They raised two children, and he gets very high up law school. She was into law school. He dumps her and leaves her, for his secretary, and she loses it, and she stalks him, and she ultimately kills him. It's a big movie about it, and it was. Anybody remember that case? I can't remember. I can still see her face. She gained a lot of weight. She was no longer attractive, and he wanted to be with this young woman, and she literally kills him and his young bride in their bed. Does anybody remember that case? Am I the only one? If I told you the name of it, they made a movie out of it. That's how bad it was. So rejection is a hard thing too. So when there's emotion involved, I think we make you know bad decisions too. We make decisions based on emotions. I still love him, or I had three kids with him. He never married me, and he married so and so. And I'm gonna make him pay. So, and you're not making anybody pay for real, but the kids. So that we
I
need
think
to.
that was Betty uh, Brokerage.
Yes. Do you remember that movie, Miss Warner?
Yeah, yes.
Oh yeah, it was not only a movie, it was a big case. It was all because nobody could believe this, you know, high class woman, had killed her husband, and she was just crazy. Yeah. Betty Broderick, that was her name. Does anybody check it out? It was interesting. But I wonder if she should probably still be in prison, I'm guessing. I don't know if she got bail. I mean, got parole. I don't think she was eligible for parole. And if she was, it probably not for a very, very long time. Um, but anyway, those are just some of my thoughts for Father's Day. I think, we should do more in terms of honoring, fathers and those of us who are in a position that we can step in and be the role model for the missing parent, whether it's the father, the mother, or what have you, we should do it. And if we're raising a child by ourselves, we should welcome and solicit input from people of the opposite sex to help us with things that we just won't understand because it's not in our DNA to know how to pee sitting down, standing up, aiming at Cheerios or wearing sanitary. I can't imagine being a guy trying to talk to my daughter about sanitary napkins, but you have to. Or guys needing to learn how to comb a little girl's hair. That's a big deal. So if you live next to a single father helping with the baby's hair, he'll appreciate it. Um, so anybody else have to add before we wrap up this Father's Day discussion?
Yes, I have been listening, and it's been very interesting, and the various stories in terms of what you just said in terms of combing the daughter's hair. I don't know if you guys remember it actually won might have been an Academy Award. It was a movie about it was an animated movie about a Black father and a daughter, and the mother, I think, had gotten cancer. And so the father had to take care of the little girls, and she had all this hair. And it took a minute before he wasn't hurting the little girl because he trying to comb through the hair. And at the end, he finally figured it out. He had gotten help, but it was it became a movie or a very I think it won some type of award, either I think with the Academy Awards or something of that nature. Um, but in regards to my own experiences, many of the things that people spoke about were similar. I had a situation where I had a father that was around. He was in the home until I was actually probably 8 or 10. And interesting enough, we were probably, myself and my sister were probably the only ones that did not want my mother and father to be together, and they got
Wow.
back together. So they divorced and actually got back together, and we could not believe it because that just wasn't a good situation. I found out when I got older that my father had actually been a minister. Both my parents are from the South. My grandfather was a one of those Southern, not he didn't ever went to the seminary or what have you, but he was, considered to be a minister or what have you. And I guess that's how he let my father marry my mother. They were both well educated, went to Dillard. I think they met at Dillard and moved out here, I think, because of my father. I think he even was a minister at one of the big churches here at Holman, which is where Reverend Lawson, if you, but he wasn't there at the time. But anyhow, but at some point before I knew my father, he had become very angry. And he was going to UCLA and he tore up his thesis in theology. And I think that was something that affected the rest of his life and our lives, because I always remember my father when I was young, very angry. And my mother and father always arguing because my father was unemployed most of the time, but very, very educated. And I think I found out later on, I realized that he was unemployed because of probably a lot of the racism. And he couldn't get and keep a job very long. And so my mother was mad. She was an educator, and because he was home most of the time, that was a big part of their arguments. But at some point down the line, my mother always, they did finally separate. My mother always encouraged us to have a relationship with my father, and my father was very good at wanting us to be very aware of our heritage. He had us speak in Swahili when we would go places. I think he went to school with Dr. Malana Karenga for a period of time. He was learning Zulu, and so he was but he pushed it on us in a way where we didn't really accept it. Fast forward, when I became older, I actually had a relationship with my father because of that, because I became interested in my heritage more, because it wasn't being forced on me. And I met other historians that I actually introduced to my father that he had known about, but had never met. So we had developed a relationship. My father had eventually moved back to New Orleans. But in between time, he had married a Filipino lady. He actually went over to the Philippines and married this Filipino lady, which was very interesting. I met her a couple of times, and they brought her daughter over. And for whatever reason, he didn't have a lot to do with me when I was little, but he decided to take a lot of interest in her, including telling me that I was not going to get a birthday gift because her birthday was around the same time as mine. And that was really, really, I can't understand how my father's mind, especially him being so pro-Black, that he ended up marrying this Filipino woman and tells his Black daughter that he's not going to get a gift. But later on, my mother got with another gentleman that I considered my stepfather. And so I ended up having, so to speak, two fathers. This person actually considered me to be his daughter my mother and father were never married. My mother died when I was in my early 20s, but he and his family welcomed me, and he would never call me stepdaughter. He would always say his daughter. And to this day, that whole family accepts me as their niece or cousin or sister. And I have a better relationship, interesting enough, with some of my aunts and with my father to some extent than he had with even some of his blood children. But they always have accepted me because I always did a lot for him. He did a lot for my mother, but he was a difficult man. And my stepfather and my father actually met each other, and they had a decent relationship when I was older. So I was actually helping take care of both of them. So as time went on, things changed. And one of my father's dreams was to go to Africa. And I did get him to Africa before he died. And so as we got older, a lot of the things that I thought I would never do, because at one point didn't have anything to do with my father and never thought I would want to, but because I grew and realized that there's a lot of things that happened to my father, and we did have a lot more in common. I did actually ended up taking care of him until he died. So, I just look at the fact that, I talk to people all the time and they have issues with their parents. But as you grow older, hopefully you grow and you learn that there are a lot of reasons why these things occur. And hopefully you can see the better side, because there was a lot wrong with my father, but there was also a lot right. And to make a long story short, at my father's services, people probably couldn't believe that I said the things I did, but I just felt I had to, because one of the things about my father was he did it his way every time, no matter what he did. And I had a lot of stories which were it was kind of therapeutic for me to talk about it, but at the time it was like hair pulling because of the ways he did things. But he always had his own way of doing it, and he was going to do it his way. And and I can laugh about it now. And so anyhow, that's my experiences. And I think that it's really good to to be able to talk about this subject, because it's something that I actually, my mother died when I was young. My father was around, but really wasn't a big part of my life. My stepfather was more in my life, and it's something that now I appreciate, being able to think about the stories and just watching other people and their father, and wishing I would have had a better relationship when I was younger. So that's it.
That's interesting because you made me think about when, what is our responsibility? So here you have this absent parent, be it your mother, your father, whatever, who didn't take care of you. What is our responsibility when they get up in age as their children? Anybody have that experience or just thoughts on it? Like, do we take care of that parent? I posted something on our Facebook page this week about Tina Turner. She's doing an interview, and she's very clear that her mother never liked her. And we know from the movie, which is probably embellished, but she pretty much told her, "You stay with Ike no matter what." But she talks about continuing to care for her mother despite her mother, like her mother, even after when she becomes Tina, she's no longer with Ike. She continues to care for her mother. I've not had that situation, but I don't think I have that much character. And as Black people, we're all engrossed in the religious thing, and God says, do unto your father, or whatever, whatever. And I also, my response to that is, I'm sure somewhere in the Bible it says that the parent's supposed to take care of me when I'm a kid. So, my father was old, and I don't know how old he was, but he was sick. They didn't even call me when he died. I just had nothing to give. Like, I'm in my 40s or 50s at that point, like really. So, but anyways, anybody have any thoughts on what is our responsibility to parents who didn't raise us? Is our responsibility to take care of them in their time of need as they get older? And it doesn't have to be your experience, people. Just what's your thoughts on it? Anybody? Can I call on somebody? Um,
I
I know I was
I'm
trying to
just
get somebody else to talk, Matthew, but they ain't saying nothing today. They're not. Go
I
ahead. What's your thoughts on it? Do we have a
kind of like
responsibility to take
I-
care of parents that didn't take care of us?
I'm kind of like you in a sense, Helen. I mean, I would just say this. First of all, maybe everyone is not meant to be a parent. Just thank God we've had probably parents that we can say good things about, right? But realistically speaking, everyone is not meant to be one. And but I don't I wouldn't advocate doing something negative to someone because they may have not done the best things for us in our lives. So from a humanity point of view, I think, okay, well, you know what? Um, just to break it down into simple thing, I'm not going to do you the way you did me. So if it's as much as me maybe helping you get a glass of water or making sure you go out of this world a little bit more comfortable, then that's the extent of me showing humanity to you. you know I'm going to try to do all I can do. Maybe you don't deserve it. I'll leave that to some other judgment.
True.
But
That's true.
me
Definitely an
trying to
individual. Definitely an individual decision. There's no question. And I don't tell anybody what to do with their family. You gotta do what works for you. And if your indoctrination is such that you're not going to be comfortable with the fact that you didn't take care of your parent who didn't take care of you, then, I remember Oprah Winfrey talking about her mother. Her mother was horrible to her. And she talks about somebody's house they're living in, and the woman doesn't want Oprah in her house because she's dark skinned. So Oprah has to sleep on the porch while the rest of the family sleeps in the house. Whoa. I think I'd have a hard time forgiving my mother for allowing something like that to happen to me. But I haven't lived it, so I don't know because we seek the love of our parents. And anybody who works in social work, as Miss McBride said, we know that you can remove kids from their horrible homes all day long, but that's who their family is. That's where they want to be. But I don't know. Miss Graves, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
Oh yeah, I just want to say this real quick. Yeah, I understand about what you're saying. I had a mother that was there for me, and but she wasn't very. She was good, but she was like very manipulating for me to keep me isolated. For me to, she grew me as a child to take care of her, even to this day. But my daddy died years ago, and my brother got his life, and my sister got his life. But I could still forgive her and forgive her. And I, was being honorable. Like my grandmother died, she said, "Take care of your mom." I'm like, I was young then. What do you mean, take care of your mother? You know. And so I've been taking care of her. Even I was in elementary, high school. Called to make payment arrangements on bills and stuff. I always had to be mature and responsible as a child. Get your own job. You got to buy your own clothes for school when you 13. Summer job and but I did it, and because I was young, and I've been I was trained that way. And my other brothers and sister, brother Suzanne, was able to have fun, hang out, to go out with family functions. Out of town, but I didn't. I always had to work. Worked at McDonald's. I worked in a trainee being manager. Then I did summer jobs. I did summer youth, worked at the housing authorities, the college and stuff like that. But it taught me to be independent and work. But I always forgave her because that's why I was trained and raised to take care of your mom and be respectful Christian. And to this day I'm still taking care of her. But at the same token, I forgive her, but it's been hard because she's very kind of negative and never say anything nice. I never say you look nice or you look pretty or you done good. I bought a couple of homes. I bought a house. I moved, let my parents live in there. My dad died, but she brought all her grandchildren there, and they were boys that was kind of unruly. And then I put her by herself, and they followed her there. Then I built her an apartment on my property, and she stays there now. And it's really challenging, but I call myself trying to do my part as a daughter and don't put her out on the streets and stuff like that. And she doesn't want to go to a older home in this waiting list or whatever. She did try. So long story short, I just been trying to, do my part as a daughter, but it's really taxing, and I'm trying to be positive because she'll come knock on the door from her house and just come in and get food, and I buy her food, but she wants to come in here. She's kind of a person that's very controlling and very negative. And I try to keep my peace, my mindset from her because I'm not a negative person. I'm very positive. I turn negative into positive, lemons and lemonade. That's me, you know and everything. But I'm still trying to, honor, and like in the Bible and when my family taught me, because everybody else is dead and gone. And my sister has cancer. I'm helping take care of her now. My brother has his own life. So it's only me really now anyway. Even when they were up to par, they still didn't help her and do anything for her. So I just asked God, I've been telling God, just help me, Lord. She's 79. She had a birthday yesterday. I gave her a party. So I'm just praying that God, sees what I'm doing and just protect me in the midst of trying to help her not be homeless, because she never really worked, so she don't have that much money coming in, stuff like that. So she gets to live here rent free and everything, and keep the little change she has and all that. But it's daunting as far as her negativity, in her heavy spirit is very negative. You know,
Right.
when Mother's Day come, she don't say Happy Mother's Day. We don't even get a gift or anything, but she asking us, "Where's my gift at? Where's this?" And when you give her a gift, she wants two or three. That's not enough. You can't fill up her cup, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm just asking God, help me through it to, she go home to glory, you know. And even when I try to date, I've been alone for years, and I'm not an ugly lady by all means. But she'll run them off or say mean things, talk bad about me. When my back turned, say mean things to turn them off on me and something like that. So all I've been doing now is just focusing on working, trying to pay the bills and take care of my autistic grandson. That's where I'm at right now. So I sympathize with you all on here. Thank you.
God bless you. You're a better daughter than I will ever want to be. My grandmother was not a nice woman, and I used to say to my mother, "Why do you put up with her?" And she'd say, "Because she's my mother." And I'm like, whatever. And when my mother died, I told my grandmother under no uncertain terms would I be putting up with the nonsense that my mother did. I didn't feel any allegiance to her. Yeah, but that's just me. But God bless you. And I hope that yeah, I would say I hope that your mother will see the light, but if she's 79 and the light isn't flickering, it's not
No,
gonna happen.
that's why
So you just
I just pray to
you
her
have
to
to
go to,
take
yeah,
care
I
of
pray to her
yourself.
to go. Yeah, that's why I go away to myself and be by myself and be involved in different organizations and get out and go to church and just try to be around positive people. I'm praying that when she goes home to be the glory. I know I did my part. I didn't put out on the streets, be homeless because she has, I think, mental problems. Challenging because you shouldn't be that way. Something wrong with you mentally. To be
Yeah.
so negative and nothing makes you happy.
Right. Wow. Miss Neblet, what's going on, girl?
Hey, aloha. How are you all?
I'm
Um,
good.
I'm going to say, well, my thought is because of the times. Um, like when my father passed, I had gone away to school and everything and living elsewhere. So when he passed, it was very surprising for friends and family to come up and say, "Yeah, I appreciate your dad. Even after you left high school, he still came and supported us." So I think it's about the generation. My mom's brother, his sons, they all married women with children. You don't find that too much these days, where
Right.
they raise them. So I'm going to guess it has to do with the times. My dad and the other gentlemen in his circle, they were always out there helping some way, somehow. So, um, and I see it over here, not as much, but I do see the older men taking responsibility with the young men that don't have fathers or men in their life. So, I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's a generation thing. I don't see it or hear of it too much um, these days, but yeah, I'd say I had a pretty cool dad. Didn't understand a lot of things. I actually thought he worked for the CIA. It's like, why are you here? How did you know? It's like, dude, we never said anything. But he always seemed to know you up to something, and he was there to correct me. So I appreciate that. Even
You
as
do
I
now.
grow, yes,
You didn't when
because
you were a
I
kid,
would
because you're like, damn.
I had issues with him. No, I'm like, really? But now it's like, okay, I get it. I understand it more, and all I can do is attempt to share that with my son, and his dad, I don't have an issue with him. Never did. He did what he needed to do, so when I hear young women or women in general, like, don't rag on your child's father. We don't know what the issue is. We don't know what yours is, but the child will figure it out as they get older. So if he's not doing what he's supposed to, stop talking about it. The
Right.
child will know, and one day they will confront them. But I don't have an, well, you know me, I ain't got an issue with anybody. I stay to myself and just let it ride. But yeah, I think there was a quietness that the men of our father's generation, they just knew what they had to do and they stepped in to do it, and, no fanfare. So, yeah, that was a big surprise. People coming up and saying, thank you for sharing your father. It's like, well, I didn't know I was, but okay. So yeah, it
You're
is
right.
what it is.
And a lot of it is probably generational, cultural. Susan, actually,
Hmm.
for those of you who don't know, is calling from Hawaii. And you've been over there more than 20 years now, haven't you, Sue?
I believe 22 years this summer.
Long time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, folks, this has been an interesting conversation. I hope that some thoughts were triggered for you in some respect. But at the end of the day, I say that we have to celebrate ourselves, which includes the men in our lives, whether they're our fathers, our husbands, our brothers, or what have you, where we can, let's hold them up high. I think we've all heard the term, we love our sons and raise our daughters because we're, overprotective, supposedly, of the boys in our lives. And we're raising these kids. At the end of the day, we have to figure out what do we need to do differently so that they do remain a part of our lives always. And if the relationship doesn't work out, that's the relationship between you and him. It has nothing to do with the relationship between the absent, and I keep saying him, but let me say, because we're talking Father's Day, but the absent parent and the child, that has nothing to do with them. So unless that person is bringing harm to the child, and harm isn't
Mm.
because they don't want to go out with you anymore. Harm is because, they're abusing the child or not feeding the child or not clothing the child properly when you can't trust them to be alone, the child to be alone in their care. Those are legitimate issues. But somehow we have to separate all that other stuff and let these fathers step up to be fathers in whatever way that they can. Um, and that's all I have to say on this subject. For those who have been fathers, thank you, Matthew, for hanging out with us. I didn't think guys would show up for this, but I kind of wish they would have because we need to hear from them. And they also need to know that, some women are on your side. We're not all anti-father or anti-black man, right? Um, so unless somebody else has something else that they want to add before we close, I'll stop recording and we can sign off. Does anybody have anything else that you want to add before we go? Miss Thomas, you've been quiet. Miss Ashley, how are you? Miss Stanton, I don't think I ever get you to talk, but I try.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you, Miss Ashley. How are
I just
you?
pray, I pray for all the fathers. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, we just keep praying that things get better. Okay.
That's what we got to do.
Okay. Love you.
Um, all right, you too. And just so you all know, we will be meeting next week. And actually, I've got the next 2 weeks lined up. So I'll say we're back. We're getting back on track. And also, let me let you know too that for those of you who are looking to do our Cuba trip, I have details on that. So I'm going to stop recording, and we can. Anybody have any questions about that? I can share the details with you. Um, Carrie Ann, thank you so much for your input, Matthew. Miss McBride, I appreciate you guys. Let me stop the recording if I can find the stop recording button.